And greetings and salutations, everyone. You have once again tuned into On Air with Walt, and I'm Walt. And we are here at ubngo.com if you want to check out the show. You can find us on YouTube, and would love it if you'd like, share, and subscribe. We gotta love those subscribers on YouTube, On Air with Walt, and of course my website, www.OnAirWithWalt, and you can find me anywhere that podcast platforms are, including iHeartRadio. And today we have a very voluminous, interesting guest. It is Douglas Wright. He is an author. You know what? I should probably get my notes. I'm doing this from my memory, huh? So, just to read officially here. He has been a forefront of UFO research and extensive extraterrestrial science for well over 40 years. He is a very multi-talented author, speaker, teacher, artist, and woodworker. And his multimedia presentations are enlightening, entertaining, educational, and spiritually empowering. He's taught hundreds of classes of workshops and related to extraterrestrial life and science, and we're going to talk a little bit about consciousness as well. He has a book way back in the day, Soulic Journeys, which I found on Amazon actually, portrays the unique path of unique path of a spiritual warrior and reveals simple techniques to develop our true spiritual potential. So without further ado, Douglas Wright.
Well, thank you so much. And actually, my name is Douglas Taylor.
Taylor, excuse me, did I get it right?
My wife's name is right.
You know, when I interviewed your wife, and I have Taylor here. I'm just, again, my memory's going crazy. Sorry about that, Chief.
She's lucky to have
I'm
mine
dyslexic, and sometimes it shows. So, yes,
one of those illustrious people who has two first names. So.
Well, it says there Douglas Taylor, so I've covered myself. So, pleasure meeting, and thanks for being a guest on our show. And way back, your life changed as you were surfing around the globe.
Absolutely. I did have an experience that kind of, to say the least, rocketed me into a different sphere of understanding of what life is all about. And it's not something that I would brag about. I would say that I somehow am special, and so I had this experience.
Well, it's not something you asked for. It just, I mean, it just occurred.
Yeah. But I mean, let's put it this way. I was very, very interested in having the experience that I had, just because of the fact that it, in a way, allowed me to become aware of a lot of new information that was very, very powerful and that had a tremendously positive effect on me for my many, many years since that time in 1977. Some people say 78. They don't know. It was actually 77 on the Caribbean island of Puerto Rico. And I was laying in my bed. Me and my friend were staying in a little house that we had rented right on the beach up in the western coast of Puerto Rico. We were there surfing. You know, I enjoyed surfing, and at that point in my life, I could actually surf quite well. Anyway, so that's not the purpose of this talk, so I'll go into it. Man, could I surf good? No, just kidding. And so I was laying on my bed after a full day surfing, so I was quite exhausted, but I wasn't asleep. I was in what they call hypnagogic state. I mean, it's kind of right in between where you're asleep and awake, kind of in a twilight zone. But my body was laying on the bed, so it wasn't like I was taken out, of the actual room I was sitting in physically. But it was more of like a dream experience, but it was one of those dreams that is so lucid and so powerful that it leaves you almost breathless with the intensity of the imagery, the feelings that you are experiencing, maybe more elevated than anything you had ever experienced, which it was for me at that time. But I felt this spinning sensation, like I was just made up of pure energy. And then all of a sudden I found myself standing on this, what I assume was some sort of ship, staring at these 7 individuals who basically looked like regular human beings, only they had a tremendous glow. They had this sense that they were radiating this beautiful, intelligent, healing energy And I was just standing there blown away trying to figure out what was going on. And I started asking, hey, who are you? What am I doing here? What is this all about? And they began to telepathically communicate with me, which is something that I'd never experienced. I don't know if anybody's experienced that in their own dream states or whatever, but this was more of a heightened lucid dreaming type of effect, that it was almost like I was brought aboard their ship spiritually or psychically, if you want to call it that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were giving me a little bit of information about, the basic nature of what their purposes are for making contact with people like me. And oh, no questions. Anyway,
Well, no, I was going to say one questions. I mean, as we go, do you have, in retrospect, of course, because it was quite a while ago, any idea how and why you were the lucky guy that ended up where we did?
I have a little bit, not to any distinctive degree, but I was open, interested, and I believe that I became aware of a plan that had been formulated before I even incarnated into this physical body. Now we're jumping onto a
Oh,
whole
wow,
other
that's before,
bandwagon here
way
of
back. Okay,
information.
okay.
So in other words, we all have a purpose. We all come here for the most part for the purposes of working out various blockages or various situations that have been deterrents or are affecting us in a way where we're not able to completely attain our full potential. So that's kind of what, in retrospect, I've become aware of, that I really came into this lifetime to work out a lot of the various negative shocks and blocks and various experiences that had taken place over a period of many, many thousands of lifetimes, like most people have. Now, I didn't know all this at the time, obviously.
Of course.
And I was just totally enjoying the experience, because what I felt was the most elevated state of mind I had ever experienced. So it's just like I feel this sense of pure joy. I'm communicating with these individuals that are just stimulating my, intelligence to an extent that I have never experienced. I'm just so curious and just want to know, wow, I just want to learn. I want to understand what is going on. Who are you people? Because there was a certain memory that it had rekindled, almost like I was in a state of mind that I was somewhat familiar with, but I hadn't really experienced in this lifetime. And so I felt this beautiful, beautiful energy coming from these individuals. And the individual, basically in a white suit, who I was speaking with, he told me that this is this experience that many people have as a means of helping them to develop their own connection with their purpose in life, and as a means of being able to connect and give them sort of a charge, in a sense. It's almost like being plugged in
I was going to say,
to a battery.
Yeah, one of them it was just like getting plugged into a battery. Yep.
That's kind of what the feeling is like when you get this kind of connection. It's just your whole body is just charged up. It's like a caffeine overload, only in a most positive way imaginable, because there's no caffeine, no come down. And so as that went on for a little while, and he described to me a little bit about what they do when they pick up individuals such as myself and help us to have an experience of this nature, I just kept looking at the other beings who were standing there, and there was a woman standing on his right side. Beautiful, beautiful woman. I mean, they were all like, kind of looked like me, I guess you could say. Maybe that would be what everybody would kind of see the person that they're having this experience with as being similar to themselves, just out of their own mind.
Did they look taller, shorter, average size?
Yeah, they looked like they were maybe average size, 6 foot, something of that nature. And he basically described a little bit about what they were doing. And he looked over and motioned to a woman who was standing right next to him. Very, very beautiful woman, who immediately looked at me, and although I didn't see anything, I felt this energy, this intense, almost like a, I don't know, you call it a laser beam of intelligent, beautiful, healing energy just beam right into my soul. And I just, immediately again was curious, what is going on? What is this experience I'm having? And this all lasted maybe 15 minutes. It wasn't like a long
Okay.
term type of
Okay.
experience. And as it was winding down, and I could kind of see that we were coming to the close of my experience, so to speak, all I could do, because of the feelings that I had and the sense that I did not want it to go away, I just kept saying, "Can I go with you? Can I go with
Yes.
you?" And they go, "No, no, you're not even close to being ready to be able to live
Right.
in the consciousness that we live in, but maybe someday." And that was the end of that experience. And when I got back about 2 weeks later, for the first time in my life, at being 28, I picked up some brushes and I began drawing and painting for the first time ever. And I found that when I would draw and when I would paint, and I would get into that creative mode, into that flow of allowing, some kind of creative information to come into my consciousness, all of a sudden I would have that same experience again. In other words, it was like connecting to that battery. So I'm beginning to understand, wow, we all have this battery, or this battery is out there. We call it infinite intelligence, God, whatever way you want to look at it. And we can tune into it. And for me, it was happening through becoming creative, becoming artistic. And I also began writing a little bit of stuff here and there. And you saw my book. I don't
Yes.
know. And so that's kind of been the initial blast off, so to speak, in my life back when I was 28. And now I'm 68 and still going strong. It's been an incredible journey that I think I've learned a lot of information since that time, because I've been studying ever since.
Of
I
course.
think there's a
Of
certain
course.
guidance that we all have depending on what our true intent is. If we are really trying to gain information, really trying to gain knowledge, that information, that attitude is what helps us to become open and lets that information flow into us. And so, now it's like 40 years later, and I've taught a lot of classes and
Yep.
talked about it in different ways to different people. And I've become aware of the fact that we're all basically, spiritual energy beings who are recreating the essence of the life that we are experiencing at this moment, dependent on our own knowledge and information and understanding. So if all we know is, the negative crap that's going on in the news and TV, then that's going to be the world we live in. And sadly, a lot of people get caught in that world, like, somebody who goes out and
Agreed.
starts shooting people in
Agreed.
some crazy ways
Yeah.
because they've lost their connection with that positive self. And now they're just like, being knocked about in this negative state of mind in which all these different astral entities that you can't see them, they're invisible, you could call them ghosts or whatever, but in a way they're also trying to influence people. So our mind is like a transceiver, I've come to understand, and that we can receive and we can also transmit information, but it's all dependent on what frequency we're functioning on.
Yes.
And so if that frequency is something that is trying to better humanity and be positive in the sense of uh, our desire to help society to become a more positive place, then that's the alignment that we're going to make. Now, if we get lost in that turmoil of that negativity and that basically nightmare of that lower negative,
Mm-hmm.
the suicidal thoughts and all that kind of stuff, that's when you can become caught up and influenced by these other entities who have no problem. All they do is they want to come in and they're hateful, and that hate will be, utilized through you if you become a channel for them. So it's always our choice which way we want to go.
I couldn't agree more. Now, going back, as when I asked the question of, how were you selected, I've read in my gallivantings that if we invite we're open and invite sometimes, communications from other sources or just, other things, that sometimes that will occur. Not every time, but yeah, again, you were open, maybe you were a little bit inviting, and you were just at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I think it's a very simple process, really, in a way. And then on the other hand, it's incredibly complex because everybody is an amalgamation of literally billions of different
Yes.
waveform energies that are all of the experiences that we've had over, a long, long time, not just in this lifetime. So we can kind of decipher through our understanding that there have been certain blocks, certain areas in our life where we had a very, very negative experience. Like I lived lifetimes as a pirate, I lived lifetimes as a conquistador. I was one of, it goes on and on. And I don't say these things out of any kind of braggadocio because I'm not proud of the kind of energy that I had when I was doing those things. And that was what, in a sense, built up what you could call your karmic uh, energies that are connected with the world, with the physical dimension. And so you can strengthen that to a point to where you're just trapped and you don't know anything else. And so it's through a scientific understanding of the spiritual nature of consciousness that I believe, we can make that breakthrough. But it takes work, takes effort, and most of all, it just takes study and trying to, gain that next step on that level. It's like a never-ending stairway into this starry, beautiful landscape where people are living in states of consciousness that are completely beyond our wildest imagination. They're living in a paradise that we can't even begin to understand because it's so advanced from our basic
Right.
understanding, but it's all based on a frequency. So the frequency of how to align yourself with that particular higher frequency is what I have been attempting to learn how to do. And I've been successful at times and at times not very successful because I get distracted by all the
Oh,
same crap
well,
everybody else is
it's all
doing.
those shiny objects. The one thing you wrote here was is that all energy moves in wave form, and I almost agree with that. I've done investing show where we talked about he used 7 wave theories to project the from a technical perspective of what's going to happen in the stock market. He's been very successful. So I agree with you that I mean the waves and whether it's Fibonacci or a fractal or whatever is everywhere.
Yeah, I think when you break down the actual relationship of what a human being, a atom, a planet, whatever way you're looking at
Yeah.
it, it's different. It's kind of one's a macro image and one's a micro
Mm-hmm.
image. And yet it's those atomic structures that are recreating the nature of our reality, and they have a physical essence to them, which is pitched to a specific frequency of this planet. And so that's why we're aligned with this planet, and that's why we get into the same sense of understanding reality the way that other people do. Although, as we know now, we have actually 2 different realities that are going on in the United States based on people's belief systems that one thing is the way that things are or the other thing. And so, it's really a bad situation when you can't even agree on facts. And that can be a very dangerous situation for
Any
a
number of reasons.
government
Yeah,
and
no,
for
any
what
number
we're
of
trying
reasons, and
to
I,
do.
I totally agree with you. In some respects, perception is reality. Whether the perception is accurate or not, it's whatever we perceive becomes our reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the fact that the reality that you're existing in is one of a tiny fraction of an infinite number of realities that exist on a level that has a frequency makeup that is so much more speeded up and so advanced from the one that you're functioning in, then that means that you really need to humble yourself and not think that you're Mr. Know-it-all and that you're some kind of God walking around, whether you're Elon Musk or, Jeff Bezos. I saw the picture of him with a big smile on his face. I don't know why. I just felt like I should slap him. But anyway, that's on a whole different topic. But I mean, everybody has their right to exist and function and live their life, obviously. And I'm not the person who gets to judge, but I do need to judge myself. And we all do that one way or another. And so for myself, I found that when I'm willing to look at myself honestly, brutally honestly, I see that there's a lot of negativity there still, that if I can look at it and kind of take a relationship that negative energy has a specific frequency that is connected to a past life association. Like I had an experience one time when I was a pirate, when I was climbing up on a ship, like just like you see in the movies, and I was actually sneaking up on this guy and I cut his throat. Now this was a horrible, horrible experience. It was like I was being shown this information just to get me to understand what the frequency of that kind of activity does. And it was like screeching your hands on the chalkboard times a million. And so that's the frequency that went into my psychic and created a very negative vortex of energy that doesn't need to stay there forever, but it will continue to repeat and recreate itself until I go in. And there's brothers on the inner worlds I should speak about, because that's very important, that will help us to work through these things and work them out, because it's so difficult. You become so enmeshed in all of these different activities from the past that you're just tangled up, and you can't really untangle that ball of yarn without some pretty good help.
No, we can't do it ourselves. No one's an island. And I agree with you. So, I mean, the phrase that just pops into my head is spirit guides. I don't know if it's true or not, but so, we need, we can't do it by ourselves, and we need help in some way, shape, or form.
Well, it doesn't seem like a reality because it seems far out. It's like spirit guide. Where's the spirit guide, man? I don't see him. Where's that?
Exactly.
So it becomes a very, very sensitivity based alignment, to where as you become more and more sensitive, you become more and more aware of all of these little intricate elements of your own psychic that are pushing and pulling you in certain directions, so you've kind of got to learn to delineate which ones are the ones that are allowing you to grow and to become more intelligently biased in your own association with the rest of humanity, and which ones are just adding to the gigantic mess of what is going on our planet right now. I mean,
but you mentioned an important
word. You can see it
word.
as a horrible mess, or you can see it as well.
I agree. Delineation is what you've said, but that takes a little bit of discernment.
And
unfortunately,
discernment is the absolute word.
Yeah, it takes some discernment.
If you
Unfortunately,
can learn that process of discernment.
Yes.
Then that is a huge lesson. So that's what we're talking about: self-mastery.
Yes.
Lessons. How do we gain these lessons? And it's not some kind of magic formula. It's really just being aware of your dreams. That's how I started when I was, about 15, 16. I started having out-of-body experiences that, most people have. A lot of people have. I don't know if everybody has. But, they were just experiences where I became aware of the fact that my physical body was not the true individual or the essence of who I was, that it was just a part, almost like clothing that I'm wearing as a means of functioning and existing in this dimension. Kind of like if you go underwater, you gotta get the stuff that a scuba diver would wear.
Right. Gotta have a way to breathe underwater. Right.
Exactly. So we're breathing in this environment because we've gained the information necessary in order to be here and to breathe in it. So what's going to happen when we go into the next one, which everybody does when we leave this physical body and we so-called die. So that, that's a huge, huge thing to, I think nothing is more important than gaining that information and that knowledge, because that's really where you're going to go through that experience, and you can either be terrified and be lost in the miasma of all these negative thought forms that'll be floating around through your consciousness, or you can be aware that there are these spiritual teachers that are waiting to help you, but you have to be able to visualize that they're there and put yourself in a position to be aligned with them in a positive way.
Well, yeah, be not only be aligned, but be open and receptive.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree with you more. And if we ask for help in many instances, it comes. It's just a question of what form and from where. Sometimes, a lot of times for me,
Exactly.
I want assistance, but I never know where it's going to come from. And it usually comes from someplace I didn't even think was going to come from.
That's true too, but I think one of the things that's been hard, it's hard for everyone, it wasn't just hard for me, but it's having the patience to be able to recognize that this doesn't all just unravel in a matter of a few days, hours, months, years. I mean, if it's taken, what I'm looking at, thousands of lifetimes, then, you got to expect it's going to take some time. So a lot of times we lose that patience and we're like, want it to happen now, and there have been times when it has happened extremely rapidly for me, and it validated and proved things that were, to me, just absolute eye openers, mind boggling things about what my life here is truly all about. And yet, on the other hand, it seems like I can get very much caught up in the impatience of wanting stuff to happen, that it's just not the cycle. It's not the time. It's like you talked about the stock market. Right now, we're in a bear market. Okay, and that's not going to last forever. All of a sudden, it won't be that long where everybody's going, yippee-doo, we finally made the bull market and we're all making tons of money. And then everybody forgets about the bear market. It might be a couple of years, maybe longer. It depends on, there's a lot of stuff going on, macro factors, that are creating a problem for the investment right now. And, obviously the Fed raising the interest rates and all the crap that's going on. But, it's going to change. It always does. It goes from one cycle to another, just like you talked about.
It ebbs and flows, but I want it all now. I want it all now. But I agree with you. It's a journey. It's not a destination.
Well, this is a typical example of, it's not like we're here to make money and be rich and be happy with how much money we got and think we're going to be somehow find security with that. There is a certain amount of security that you get when you don't have to worry about money anymore, which is great. I'm not there yet. But I was much closer to that. I've been in Bitcoin for since 2017. And, in the last bull run, I mean, I was just watching my portfolio just go up, and I'm just going, oh yeah, everybody's going, it's going to 200,000, it's going to 100,000, it's going to 200,000, going to a million, so I just sat there and waited and didn't worry about it. And next time I looked, all of a sudden, instead of being 50% up, my portfolio was 50% down. And so I think you got to kind of take the timing of what's going on around you and utilize it in a positive way, which obviously I didn't do. But I learned a good lesson there.
Well, yeah, and take responsibility and kind of look at it, because it's, it's a moving target. It's a big time, Bitcoin especially is a moving target.
Yeah. And that's kind of the nature of these different cycles that are constantly, we're moving through all of these different emotions on a day-to-day basis. Where are they coming from? What's the connection? And oftentimes, I'd say all the time, really, we're basically being affected or influenced by experiences that we've already gone through in the past, and that we're just re-expressing those same experiences. And I'll give you an example of something that happened to me fairly recently. I was working, I've been a carpenter my whole life, and I was working with the table saw, which I'm familiar with, and I was making some little tiny pieces that needed to have a position on the table saw that was not safe. And of course, I wasn't wearing any eye protection. And So all of a sudden, the last one, it was 5 o'clock, end of
It's
the day,
always the last one. It's always the last
very
one.
last one I
Yeah.
was doing, it just got caught by that carbide blade on the table saw. And I estimated that it hit me in the left eye, not quite directly in the eye, but just above it and just around it. It was about as big as a 50-cent piece, just a little piece of wood. But it hit me going, as I calculated, it was going about 80 miles an hour. And it blinded me in my left eye uh, momentarily. I mean, it blew all the blood vessels, and all this stuff happened to where the eye just simply was blind, and I'd never had an experience like that when I was working. I never had an accident that bad. So I'm just going, oh my God, I'm blind. How am I going to work? What am I going to do? This is crazy. And to make a long story short, I had two surgeries in that eye, and it wasn't damaged. I mean, they thought it was damaged very, very badly, and it was. But after two surgeries, it was fixed to a point to where I can see out of it as good as I could before. In fact, even better, because they had to change the lens. So you have an experience like that, and you go, oh, wow, that was bad luck, or what the heck, where'd that come from? And I just had this. It was almost like an awareness that this was a direct reliving of a lifetime. And I know it sounds kind of odd, you go, how does that connect? But it just came to me, and I saw it as something I'd seen in a movie, I think a couple of days before. And it was a duel. When people used to have duels,
Yes.
I mean, can you even believe that? People used to, okay, you have dishonored my name, and now I challenge you to a duel. I mean, this is 150, 200 years ago. It was no big deal. And so I had a duel with somebody, and I got my left eye shot out. And so as I recognized and was aware of, what I feel was the source of the original experience, that negative vortex then doesn't quite have the strength that it had before. Because otherwise, you'll just keep reliving these same negative experiences. They'll come back in different ways. We don't have duels today, obviously. I'm very glad, because I would probably be
Me
out
too.
there
Me too.
getting in duels with people because I'm so
Me too.
freaking stupid. But yeah, so that's an example of the way that the healing energies can be applied through understanding and awareness, and really humbling yourself to the stupidity that I had by wanting to, show how tough I was and to prove I was right. That's the big thing. Prove I was right by having a duel with this other guy. So I know that sounds far out, but it's no more far out than a lot of the science that we see today talking about string theory and multidimensional planetary systems and all of the other information that's starting to seep through the sieve of all of the, I would call it the block of science that was based on religion to a great extent, but science and religion now need to be combined together into a spiritual science, I think, that will take people to the next level of their own development.
So I assume you won the duel.
I don't know if you'd call that a win. I don't have any idea what happened to the other guy. I was just concerned about my eye.
Of course. Now, from the original exposure and encounter back in 1977, 78, have you had any since?
Well, I've had a lot of, like I said, I mean, that was a unique experience.
Of course,
One
of course,
that maybe,
of course it was. Yeah.
not going to have another one quite like it, but I've had many that were even more intense, more powerful. I think as I've kind of evolved my frequency, I guess you could say, what happens is the actual atomic structure of your physical body is being recreated through this psychic body. So that psychic body is really the force that is pushing through and recreating the physical structures, the atomic structures of your physical body. And so it's that psychic body or that energy body that, as it begins to develop and as it begins to become surcharged with that positive energy, you become somewhat more aware of it to the extent that it becomes more you become more used to it, I guess you could say. So I've had experiences that were even more intense and more powerful than the one in the ship, and in ones that were related to starships in different ways, and but not exactly on that same level. But it's always the process of developing and making the next step. So there's never an experience that's the epitome of your development. There's always going to be the next level, the next step. Are you ready? Are you able? Are you smart enough, intelligent enough to be able to make that next step? And it has to kind of go in a process that doesn't over exceed your ability to function in that dimension.
Well, that's
Otherwise, you
probably
get lost.
evolve, right? It's like an evolution. You're ready.
It's
You're at one point, and then you're ready for the next step. So
spiritual evolution is what it is.
okay. Now, when you came back, you had no interest at all, or did you have some interest in painting and art, and you just decided to pick up some brushes and put it on a canvas?
Yeah, it was kind of very strange. But I did all of a sudden feel this new energy that I hadn't really been experiencing. I experienced it through surfing to a certain extent, but I didn't have any other way of connecting with it. And surfing is more of a physical activity. So when I started painting, and then even through woodworking to a certain extent, but specifically and especially through painting, and I became involved with a spiritual organization. I'd gone through a few different teachings, along the line, Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings. I kind of got interested in that to a certain extent. And then I found the Unarius Academy of Science, which was information as I would read it, I would actually become attuned to these incredible, very, very advanced, intelligent minds who had originally transcribed the information in these books. And so then I would feel this same enlightened energy, and also I would feel these negative aspects in which call it the dregs of my own lower nature were coming to the surface for me to begin to look at and work out. Like your worst fears are now being brought up so that you can overcome them, so that you can see that you're basically being affected by a bunch of phantoms that don't really exist in a way, except to the fact that you have believed in them and given them strength. So I've had a lot of healings in facing those fears and allowing myself to no longer be influenced by the insecurities and some of the negative aspects that have been influencing me since I was a young kid, when my mother died when I was like
probably all of us
10 years old,
Now, I know Serena, your wife, has had interest in UFOs, and from this encounter, did you get any more interest or do any more research on the UFO world, or you just kind of went out?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, I always had interest in UFOs, even before that. So that's probably another reason why I was kind of on that wavelength. But yeah, there was a tremendous interest. Not, I mean, a UFO. What really are we talking about here? It's like a contraption flying through space. Is it like a car that you can just kind of go from one planet to another, or is there something more? So I think that there are a lot of different levels of what we would call extraterrestrial consciousness, in which some of the more advanced spiritual teachers who are functioning on physical planets utilize UFOs as a means of being able to teach and to help individuals who are, in their sphere of influence, so to speak. And it would have to be a planet that is open to it, and then it wouldn't cause a complete and total calamity,
right,
which is exactly what would happen on this planet, And so, there's what I've become aware of is there are so many different extraterrestrial intelligences out there that, some don't even need any sort of UFO or any sort of vehicle. They can travel totally through their own consciousness and their own mind in many, many different dimensions. And then there are those that utilize these ships, which are like, what I felt when I was in the ship is that it was completely pure light. and that light was like reflecting from everywhere. And so I came to understand that it's actually made of a crystalline substance. This was my basic, approximation of what the ship and how it worked, how I kind of deciphered it in a way that I don't have a scientific grasp of it, but it was like the ship made of this crystalline material had a specific projector that would raise to an intense high frequency in the central portion of the ship. And that high frequency would then radiate out through the entire ship, kind of like a ringing, so that now the ship is functioning on that higher frequency, which is no longer subjective to the laws of, as we know in physics, gravity, inertia, momentum, which, we know those are the basics,
Yep.
the borderline of science and the way that the physical world works. Well, if you could move beyond that, then you're no longer going to be restricted by the speed of light, which is obviously something that has to be able to be broken if you're going to move from one star system to another.
I totally agree.
Vast differences.
Yeah, I agree. So in the time left, you started doing art, and I know you do primarily a lot of different types of art. I know UFO art, you do nature art, and visionary art. So can you expand on your artwork?
Absolutely. So like I said, that's been one of the things that has given me such a tremendous charge when I would be able to bring in something that I really had no idea that I could, I still don't feel like an artist at all. I just feel like
we have a few
I'm
pieces here. I mean, there's one piece we found on the internet real quick.
Yeah. So the idea behind that one is that back at the time, so now we're going to go back into the history of Atlantis and then into Egypt. And so at that point, when Egypt was first becoming founded, it was actually the remnants of Atlantis after Atlantis had been destroyed. And they had actually these pyramidal structures that could create, this depiction is creating a wormhole in which this ship can travel interdimensionally and is coming into that particular area for what, there would always be an important purpose. So there would be teachers on the ship coming to help to, in some way, expand the civilization that was existing at that time. Although, all civilizations had their rises and falls. So Atlantis had its destruction. Lemuria had its destruction.
Yep.
Even Egypt had its destruction.
Yep.
So, it's getting the grasp on what we talked about, the rise and fall of the nature of cycles, and how to, instead of going down all the way when the cycle does crash, so to speak, to be able to, in a sense, surf that wave, and instead of wiping out, continue riding and continue flowing onto the next cycle, onto the next wave, and continue on your upward trajectory.
Like this wave?
So this would be an example of something that I'm trying to describe. It's like when you're inside the actual wave itself, you get this incredible feeling of like almost like time kind of slows down. I don't know really how to describe it. It's just a really beautiful feeling. And so this is depicting that sense when you're actually inside the barrel, inside the tube. And in this particular one, obviously, I'm looking out at a little more interesting landscape than I would be if I was surfing my local beach break.
Yep. I got two more here real quick.
These are some of the ones that I try to depict the reality of life as it exists. There's so many different exoplanets that they've discovered now, and they've discovered that there is more than likely at least one planet for every single star in every single galaxy in the entire universe. We're talking literally quadrillion numbers of planets. And although we don't really have a direct awareness of any that have life as we know it related to them, I think that's specifically because of the lack of the knowledge of the people on this planet.
Yes.
And backwards nature it's very primitive still. So just like Star Trek, you can't go in and you can't influence a society without causing, untold damage to primitive people who aren't ready for that new knowledge, that new intelligence.
So are you working any current projects?
Oh yeah, I always have current projects going on. I I'm still working on my exoplanet series. I've done, I think, about 8 or 9 of them now. They're on my website, but I just kind of keep the creative juices flowing. I can't say that I'm always, jacked up and ready to go flying off into the universe. I'd like to, but I'm like 68. I've been a carpenter all my life. So, life is painful. My body, it no longer likes to do what I used to think was just fun and games and it was easy. And now it's telling me, hey, you've worn those things out a little bit. So I think the whole process kind of is preparing you for that process when you finally do move out of the body because it's just so wrecked.
Yeah, but you know what? We're not spring chickens, but we have experience, so that probably can help us along a little bit.
Well, I'm still going strong. I mean, I'm usually the oldest guy on the job, and like I said, I forgot more than most people know. So I have quite a bit of knowledge, quite a bit of understanding, and I get a lot of, enjoyment out of just utilizing my experience in construction and carpentry when we're doing something really creative that takes a certain amount of, mastery to be able to put together something in a, relatively short amount of time that the homeowner is, absolutely fascinated that you were able to do it. It's just the fact that you've had the experience and you've grown to the point where now you can apply it in a positive way.
So, in terms of your carpentry, do you do more residential stuff? Do you do much commercial, or just do
It's almost
redos?
most exclusively residential, but it doesn't matter if it's commercial. I do a little bit of that, but yeah, mostly residential. I do murals sometimes. I haven't did a really fun one a while back, and so things that allow me to get into the really super fancy type of stuff that they used to do, the rococo and the things that they were doing in the 1700s, with the different guilds that they had. I mean, those
Wow.
kind of buildings. Fine. I'll go through the old, like St. Petersburg, you know, in Rome, Sistine Chapel, stuff like that. I mean, that just blows my mind. You talk about people who are in tune with the positive
Absolutely,
mastery of
absolutely. I mean,
themselves. But to them, it was normal. There's nothing special
Da
about
Vinci's
them.
painting upside down, right?
Yeah, and then the difficulty of being able to get
Yes.
all of the different qualities of the foreshortening and the difficulty of figurative painting going on a ceiling. So that's something where the inspiration just flows in and it gives you energy. It's almost like you end up getting more energy out of it than you put into it.
So, if they want to learn more about you and your work, what is the best way to find out about you and learn about you?
Yeah, I have a website. It's Douglas Taylor visionaryart.com. So that's quite a long one. But I also have one on YouTube, which is just Douglas Taylor YouTube art. And so I have some hundreds of paintings on both of those different sites. So they can look on those and check it out and send me a note if they're interested. And basically, I just enjoy being able to share what little bit of knowledge and information I've been able to gain over the years.
Well, I know your paintings and whatnot are voluminous, and you even do greeting cards and stuff. So, folks, check that out. Douglas Taylor, visionaryart.com. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the website.
And that's about all the time we've got. Douglas, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to go check out some myself. And I hope you have a great evening. And keep on keeping on.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Walt.
Thanks, Doug.
Appreciate your positive attitude.
Thank you. Folks,
Thanks so much.
you've been listening to On Air with Walt, and I'm Walt Lusk, your host. You can find us everywhere that podcasts are found, including iHeartRadio, and, of course, on YouTube. We'd love it if you'd like, share, and, of course, please subscribe. And here we're at ubngo.com as well. So until next time, everybody, take care.